Good afternoon. Meeting of the Finance Committee on May 28th. Thank y'all for being here. All our staff, not for many visitors, I don't think. But I think we're ready to get started. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, we have the adoption of the agendas, and we have no public comments.
I will move approval of the agenda.
All right, any other discussion on that? Being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes unanimously.
Approval of the minutes from the February 26, 2025 Finance Committee meetings. Recommendation, the Finance Committee approve the minutes from the February 26, 2025 meeting.
I will move approval of the minutes.
I'll second that. All righty, do we have those in the backup?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Do we? They're not on the app.
Yeah, I'm showing it there. Let me see.
Yeah, I've got all my.
Interesting.
Maybe I just don't have access. Just want to make sure that the public sees what we see, you know. Go back in one more time.
Double check. Weird. It's not showing that. I will look into why that's not showing.
All right, thank you. But otherwise, y'all have seen the minutes. Okay. All right, then if there's no further discussion on that, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, we have the first business of discussion. 2025-437 fiscal year 2025 second quarter budget monitoring report from projections through September the 30, 2025. Recommendations, the Finance Committee received the fiscal year 2025 second quarter budget monitoring report.
All right, Madam Manager.
Excuse me. Yes, Mr. Chair, how are you?
Change the order?
Yeah, I'm kind of
Did we read 436 in? Is that what you read in?
That was 437.
I'm sorry, 437. Second quarterly budget monitoring.
That's how we just jump into the second
So,
item on the agenda.
I'm sorry, it looks like it's I'm sorry, it looks like you read maybe the second item, the first item is the third budget amendment, maybe?
So,
Yes, here's the first. That's
when
the-
did you print this? Did you print this?
Yes, oh, hold on, I got another sheet here. Okay, you are correct, I have the wrong
I
copy.
apologize,
I
Mr. Chair. We
apologize.
did have a reordering of the agenda this morning, and
Right,
Madam
that-
Chair.
So this, what were
What's in front of you is the current one, and we're going to read in the proper item.
All right, great.
2025-436 third budget amendments to the fiscal year 2025 general government financial and operating budget plan. Recommendations, the Finance Committee, 1, review the proposed budget amendment resolutions, and if acceptable, 2, recommend that the City Commission adopt the proposed.
Great, all right, Madam Manager.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Cynthia Ramos is here, Executive Chief of Staff, and she's worked with the Budget Office and of course the department's, Finance Department, to put this budget amendment together. It is the third one, and Ms. Ramos, if you would, please.
Yep.
Cynthia Ramos, Executive Chief of Staff to the City Manager, and I'll just jump right into the changes that we have with this third budget amendment. We are adding one FTE that's grant funded in the Gainesville Police Department. And so that brings our authorized FTE count from 1,461.75 to 1,462.75. On the general fund side, the big change here is that we are allocating funds from the excess fund balance for critical life safety projects, totaling about $4 million, $4.1 million. We're also recognizing the holiday parade donations. Those are the big changes here, and then we're allocating those expenses. On the general fund side, it'll be a transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund, and I'll get into more detail on what those projects are in the capital projects fund. And you'll see those changes. I am on page 3 of 10 of the memorandum, and you'll see those changes in the department line items. On the special revenue fund amendment, these are revenues that come into the city for specific sources or specific projects. So we have funding from the TMPA zones that it's coming into the city. We have some grant funds, some miscellaneous special revenue funds, and some donations for the fire department. We are also allocating fund balance from the tree mitigation fund for land acquisition. And we are allocating funds from the federal law enforcement contraband forfeiture funds. So we're allocating new projects and putting money back for closed projects. Those forfeiture fund projects that we are allocating funding for is communication equipment for SWAT team members and for leadership training for police sergeants and civilian supervisors. And those were approved by the City Commission previously. And we are also allocating funding for the Evergreen Cemetery for a record system program and some other operating expenditures. On the special revenue side, we have some grant funds that have come in since the last budget amendment. One is $333,335 for the State Housing Initiative Partnership, fiscal year 2023 through 2024. $21,957 for the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Grant, and $20,700 for the Police Athletic League Mentoring Program Grant. And those revenues are being appropriated, and also the expenditures are being appropriated so the departments can spend down those funds. On the capital projects fund side, you'll see that $4 million transfer that I mentioned earlier coming in. And then the projects are outlined on page 6 of 10. There's 22 projects that we are going on, on page 7 of 10. There's 22 projects that we're going to fund for critical life safety project issues. And we do have staff here to answer questions if you have more specific questions on what these projects are for. And we are also appropriating Wild Spaces Public Places funding, as well as funding in the Technology Administration Fund for the dark fiber expenses for fiscal year 2025. In the proprietary funds amendment, we have $331,200 coming in from the University of Florida for the regional transit system, technological improvements. And we're allocating those funds out to the department. And we have some use of fund balance in some of these areas, in the department areas, to reconcile fleet expenditures. And this can just be that we adopted a fleet schedule. We realized during the fiscal year we want to shift some things around, and we're making those adjustments here. And that wraps up the budget amendment.
All right. Commissioner Book.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief of Staff. This is some very dense material, so I do have a few questions. Just want to make sure that we've kind of reviewed things in a way that will allow us to pass it on to the full commission. So page 2 of 10, I understand the use of the fund balance. We've been talking about this quite a few times in our, as it relates to what we're going to do in the so essentially 4.1 million for the different projects listed there. Is this going to be the extent of the fund balance, or are we going to have some additional things that come before us? Madam Manager.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is just a portion of the approximate $18 million. There's about $14 million left that we will come to the commission probably in June or later in the summer when we're trying to balance out the budget. This is excess fund balance above the fund balance policy that the commission has approved.
Right, understood. So this is about, just under half of what we may be making some changes to.
No, it's way less than half. It's approximately 14 million remaining.
14 million. Thank you for that. And then this is just a very minor, the holiday parade we had in a couple of places here, and we just took, some, I guess, are we cleaning up the books on those for both?
Yeah, so
budget years?
So we get the revenue in, and we recognize that revenue, and then we bill it against the expense accounts. And that's what we're doing here. We're recognizing that those donations came in.
The revenue is collected, I'm sorry for interrupting you, Cynthia, and if I might, Mr. Chair. So this revenue comes from the chamber. They collect for us, and once they send it to us, then obviously we settle out, the departments that have made expenses, but we have to at least bring it back to the commission. Would this be retroactive? Is this retroactive? Yes. Okay, I just kind of want to make sure.
Yeah, we had the 2 previous ones there, so it looked like that's what we were doing, was balancing the books on those two years. Just on page 7 of 10, the General Capital Projects Fund, this is just a question about 2 of them. In there, we have Thomas Center, and I understand the projects, fire suppression, and we got Thomas Center, some other things related to ductwork and elevators. And I thought we were also doing some funding for under Wild Spaces Public Places for the Thomas Center. So it's just kind of making sure our complete allocations are for the Thomas Center, where those funds are coming from.
Good afternoon, Brian Singleton, Special Advisor for Infrastructure. We do have an allocation in Wild Spaces Public Places for Thomas Center A. We are starting with an envelope study. The reason why Thomas Center A is eligible and not Thomas Center B is because there is a museum component of Thomas Center A that falls under the Wild Spaces Public Places program.
No, that's a really good explanation. I couldn't quite wrap my head around the two. So basically, half of that center is really not eligible in the way that we use those spaces, those funds.
Correct. Thomas Center B is building and planning department since and housing, since those functions are not a publicly accessible area that falls under our nature's and active parks. That's the reason why that funding source cannot be used on B.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I did have a quick question about, there are 22 projects, and I remember 21 for some reason added. Which one did we bring back above that list? The cutoff was at 21.
It was the bypass lane for temporary Station 9.
But that was the 22nd one that we added. Madam Manager.
I'm sorry, I'm having a problem with this. But to be just a little bit more specific, we're referring to fire station number 9.
Correct, temporary Station 9.
Temporary station number 9. There is no overhang there, and it's been that way for a while. So our firefighters have to go out in inclement weather, rain, of course, and so this needs to be put in place in order to improve the work environment for them.
Is there a real philosophical difference between spending this here as opposed to Street Station Strong Foundations for that?
I would not recommend spending Street Station Strong Foundations on a temporary location that we will not have in our inventory for the next decade. So I believe this would be the correct funding source for that.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense to tell that the voters are thinking long-term infrastructure. So that I think I agree with that. Sounds good. All right, thank you. Continue. Any other questions?
Yeah, while you're up there.
Quickly, I know we had talked about looking at doing some roof work at McPherson, McWilliam & Johnson, and the Thomas Center. Are those all come out of Wild Spaces, or are they just still in the planning phases? Like, where are we on those?
So for McPherson and for the Johnson Center, and we are actively working on getting quotes for that work at this point in time. Those will be funded by Wild Spaces Public Places. The Thomas Center component, we're still evaluating that with the envelope study. There's not an immediate need at Thomas Center A right now, but once that envelope study is done, we'll put a scope together for that project as well.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, let us look at. We're digging into this. I'm sure we'll have something here. There's a lot in this.
If you two don't have any other questions, I'm happy to make a motion.
All right.
I am going to make a motion that we recommend the city commission adopt this proposed budget resolution.
All right. We have a motion. Is there any comment from the public, Madam Clerk?
There's no comment. There's no public comments.
All right. All those in favor signal with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. The motion is to recommend the city commission adopt the proposed resolution, which is 2025-436, third budget amendment to the FY 2025 general government financial and operating plan budget. That was the resolution on the floor. The motion was to recommend the city commission adopt the resolution.
Apologies, I keep forgetting to turn on my microphone.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we have the 2025-437 fiscal year 2025 second quarter budgeting monitoring report for projections through September 30, 2025. B, recommendations. The Finance Committee receives the fiscal year 2025 second quarter budget monitoring report.
All right. Madam Manager?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So Cynthia Ramos again is here to present this report. We simply need to present this report, of course, to you. She's worked with the Finance Department and, of course, all of the operating agencies to make sure that we have done the best that we can to bring this information to you today.
Cynthia Ramos, Executive Chief of Staff. I'll provide a detailed review of the revenues and expenditures before we talk about the overall status of the general fund. But on the general fund revenue side, and this is page 205 of the memorandum, we are showing that we are going to, we're projecting revenues to be 1.3 million or 0.8% lower than the amended budget. And this is primarily due to the streetlight funding that was retained by GRU on top of the GSC, Government Services Contribution, and also attorney fees related to House Bill 1645. And those fees, as of April 30th, so 1 month later, are now $198,489 for the year. So there'll be a little bit more of a reduction there when you see this report again in about 3 months or so. And so the revenues are 1.3 million under. And on the expenditure side, most of our departments are projected to end the year on target with the amended budget. Most departments are below the 50% threshold of the mid-year. So we're doing fine here. But we do have in fire, we're in the Gainesville Fire Rescue Department, we are projecting an overage of $616,150 related to overtime expenditures. And I believe Chief Hillhouse, during his budget workshop, expressed the challenges with recruiting and filling vacant positions, and that's a residual effect of that here that we're showing. And so overall, we are projecting that we will have a $1.9 million deficit at the end of the fiscal year. Again, we still have 6 months left of the year. So we are still monitoring department budgets to make sure they stay within where they are. And if there's any other areas where we can streamline expenditures, we are looking at those as well. And that sums up the report.
Commissioner Brooke?
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think it's pretty notable that under the general fund and our operating expenditures, our year-end projection is still lower than fiscal year 2024, and that's extraordinary. And so I think lost in the, we probably have 200 pages of backup here, and that's not an exaggeration. And in that and all the line items and the figures, what's lost in the overall picture, the financial picture, is we're spending less this year than we spent the preceding year in our general fund. That doesn't happen in city government, and that's notwithstanding the fact that we may be looking at some shortages. We've been in some real financially challenging times that will continue for the next few years, I think. But I think what might be helpful for the full commission would be, and I think we did this last year, Madam Manager, is to show the graph of the general fund year-end budget for the last whatever amount of years we can reasonably capture, because what's going to show is a gradual increase except for last year, year to year. And there may be some little ticks down, but I think that's very important, because when you're the public trying to understand budget, what you want to see is how are they spending and what are they doing in the big picture. And the big picture in this case is essentially $5 million less in general fund, and not across our $400 and something million full budget, but general fund, the things that we can control the most of. So I think that that's notable. I think it's commendable, and that's my speech on that.
Okay. But Madam Manager, some of this, by the time we get to the year, some of our non-departmental will be higher because of some revenues correct from some grant, the kind of things that do they get put into non-departmental?
Yes, but
Some things,
general fund,
but not on general.
not on general.
Okay, okay. I just remember that our non-departmental FY24 was quite a bit bigger than FY25. So I think that's where most of what you're seeing, Commissioner Book. And so if you can remind us in essence how we fill that hole between now and the end of at the end of the year, of course we have a long ways to go still, but the roughly the close to 1.9, most of that from government services contribution that was reduced unilaterally?
We will clearly, probably within the next month or so, start to really hone in on any vacancies that are out there. We're already monitoring, we already have a hiring freeze on. But we will start to hone in on any vacancies and ask departments to slow down any of their operating expenses as we move towards the end of the fiscal year. If we see that we're not going to be able to close that gap, which I don't believe will be the case, we will come to the commission with an amendment asking to use some of the excess fund balance to close the gap. But I don't think we will be in that position.
Instead, by
By the end of the fiscal year.
By the end of the fiscal year, we'll have some salary savings and
Absolutely.
some positions to be able to fill that 1.9.
Absolutely.
And then we will, out of our healthy fund balance, we were going to spend some, like we just did for the budget amendment, on some capital. And then we're going to have some further conversations about the rest of that. But at least by the end of this year, we will probably be able to fill this hole in.
Yes, absolutely. We were in the same position last year. We'll be okay.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Is that all you have?
I'm all good. We also include in here a detailed overview of the Ironwood Golf Course as an informational item. But you'll see here that we're projecting a little bit of a loss here at the end of FY25, but we're continuing to monitor operations in areas where we can experience some cost savings there.
And Mr. Chair, if I might, Ironwood is not a proprietary, it is a part of the general fund, but because of the audit done by the state a couple of years ago, they wanted us to continue to make sure that the commission was in touch with how the Ironwood operations were going financially. So that is why we're making a note to bring Ironwood up.
Okay.
Because it is in the general fund and it will be covered in the end if it runs a deficit. It's not as if it's a proprietary that will run in the hole and somehow have to be infused with the general fund revenue infusion to balance it out. It's already in the general fund. But because of the audit that was conducted by the State Auditor General, they felt that we needed to continue to inform the commission about the performance of Ironwood, so.
Thank you, Madam Manager. And Ms. Ramos, just so a reminder before we take this to the City Commission, remind us of how concessions changed from previous to this year, and that's why there's a bit of a difference this year.
Yeah, so in January of 2025, the concessions operations were contracted out to a third party. And the city now shares a percentage of the revenue generated by those concession sales, and I think that's 10% of sales. And so we're now seeing that reduction on the revenue side, but you also see a reduction on the expenditure side, where we won't be spending as much to operate the concessions operations. And so in the on the revenue side of the golf operations golf course, you'll see that we projected a much lower amount on the concessions revenue than what we budgeted, because we're not anticipating that revenue to come in at that level anymore.
Great. Thank you for that reminder, so that when we see that, we remember that was what happened with the concessions at Ironwood. Commissioner Brooke?
With only three of us, I don't even have to hit the button. It's pretty good.
I was poking.
I just think Ironwood is, this is another example where perspective is really helpful. Going back a few years, regardless of how it was funded, it was still funded at a much greater loss. And just historically, it was 1 million or greater. I don't have those specific figures in front of me, so I'm not attempting to exaggerate, but they were large and they were annual. So if we're in a position where we have a recreational facility that we're funding at a loss, all recreational facilities cost money, and we're able to bring in youth and older populations and do some community education and rent the venue, I think that's the right use of Parks, Rec, and Cultural Affairs. And I think that this is probably where we want to be with this particular recreational facility. And I know they got the new carts, right, which was big. And one of the other improvements, Chief of Staff, they're closing for a day so they can do maintenance, which allows us to keep the course in the rest of the days. And these are things that courses do. I'm not an expert, but I mean, that makes sense practically. So I'm appreciative of what we're doing out there to make that a recreational facility that's worthwhile for the city to use and allow others to use. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right,
We're just receiving this report, Mr. Chair.
that's
Just-
right. So this
yes.
is the receiving report for this portion of the budget. So we don't require a motion on this. All right. Seeing that we don't require a motion on this, I think is there any comment from the public on this item?
No comments at this time.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, then we're prepared for our next item.
2025-421 fiscal year 2025 second quarter city investment performance summary report. The recommendation, the Finance Committee review and accept the submitted fiscal year 2025 second quarter city investment performance summary report and refer to the report to the City Commission.
Yes, Mr. Chair, William Johnston is at the podium, and he is prepared to provide this report to the committee today. Mr. Johnston?
Commissioners, William Johnston, Investment Officer for the city. The commission previously asked pension investment staff to provide semi-annual investment reporting. This is part of that. This is fiscal year 25 second quarter for the period ending March 31st. The reporting includes the city's operating and surplus fund assets, which are basically the city's cash, and also the city's longer-term pension trust fund investments. I'll refer to the first attachment and just briefly walk you through what's going on fiscal year 25. The top of the table shows the city's operating funds. These funds are invested primarily in fixed income securities. They're limited by statute and policy as to what type of investments we can use, more so than the longer-term trust funds. The top of the table shows investments reported as annualized yields. So when you look at that, that's the anticipated yield for the entire fiscal year. That's just the way that many of these short-term securities are reported yield-wise. Most of the city's assets are held in the Florida State SBA Prime Fund, which is basically a local government money market type account. It provides daily liquidity, and for fiscal year 25, it had been earning about 4.7% through March 31st. The yield on this type of fund typically moves in line with the Fed funds rate, and we do expect that rate to be lowered prior to the end of the fiscal year. It's been lowered a few times already. So we'll likely see that 4.7% come down a bit. We'll probably annualize it closer to 4.5%, something like that. But that's still a very good yield. And part of the reason for that is that the yield curve is still partially inverted. The front end of the yield curve is inverted out to about 2 years, and then from 2 years further out, it's a normalized curve. That's something that's changed over the past couple of years. It had been fully inverted for quite a while. And what you'll see is the other part of the cash that we invest is invested in a bond portfolio with longer term maturities. So as we see the front end of the yield curve come down and these money market type accounts pay less, we'll be shifting assets into longer term bonds to take advantage of those yields. We do have about $48 million in the bond portfolio, and it's returning an annualized yield right now of about 3.94%. So slightly less than the SBA Prime Fund, but still a decent return. We also, at the end of the quarter, had just under $12 million in our bank accounts, and the bank pays us not really fully Fed funds rate, but a couple percentage points on that. So the total in operating fund cash was a little over $333 million, and on that, through the 6 months of fiscal year 25, we'd earned over $7 million, and we expect to earn, similar to that for the rest of the year. So I think we're on track to earn around $14 million for the year. We do spend some of the assets down, so as you spend assets down, you're not earning the yield on those. So we probably won't earn as much in the second half of fiscal year 25. But in the gray part of the table in that section, I'm actually showing the year-to-date yield. So on the total portfolio of all of our operating cash, we earned about 2.39%, and you could double that almost, and we would expect to earn about double that for the full fiscal year. which is in line with the, more or less with the annualized yields higher up in the table. The second part of the table shows a summary of the pension and trust fund investments. It has been a volatile 6 months, and the pension plans reflect that to a certain degree. The general pension plan was down 4.9% fiscal year to date through March 31st. The police and fire pension plan was down a little bit less than 1%. The differential there is primarily because the police and fire pension plan holds more real estate and fixed income investments, and those types of securities and investments aren't going to be as volatile as equities, but they also return typically less over the long term. The general employees pension plan is more highly invested in equities, which will be more volatile, but which provide higher rates of return over the long term. And we try to focus on the long term since these are what we consider to be perpetual plans, hopefully. The retiree health insurance trust fund was down about 3.95%, and the Evergreen Cemetery Trust Fund was down a little bit less than 3%. Do you have questions about any of those returns or any of the backup material?
Just one. Could you give me just kind of the last 5-10 years worth of returns with a police and firefighters pension versus general employees pension, just to see how those compare over a longer term with the two different?
Sure. I mean, within that table, you've got return comparisons going back to fiscal year 21. Now we can create, we've got all the data going back 30 years, so we can certainly provide that. The data is also included not in a comparison, but separately in the backup. But we can, come back to you.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I may have just missed it in the backup then. I don't want to make you do work twice.
But I mean, you can see if you look at just at the table that's provided, you've got fiscal year 24, 23, and 21 returns provided there in attachment A. Mm-hmm. And you can see, for instance, in 24, general pension plan earned, over 25%. Police and fire earned about 21%. In 23, the general pension plan earned almost 23%, while the police and fire earned a little bit less than 16%.
Sure, yeah. I was just looking long term, like what all that kind of came out to. This has been a weird few years.
Sure.
And
sure.
I didn't know what those two different strategies
we can,
over a long time frame.
We can create a table that will show you 5, 7, 10, 20-year return comparisons if you like.
Very good, thank you.
Bring that back to another finance committee meeting, or just
you can drop it on email to me.
Okay.
I'm the only one that's looking for it.
We'll provide it to the
You
city
want us to
manager.
just provide it to you? Do you want to
Absolutely.
provide it to the entire committee, Commissioner?
If you could, Mr. Johnson, if you could provide it to each of us, that's
Sure.
fine. It didn't have to be meaning. The curiosity is, I understand kind of how it.
Certainly.
Most of us can look at our personal, and there's a little chart, and we can compare it, and we click this and this, and it, it telegraphs out the 10 years, and we can see which one we would have been better off in. So I think that is kind of what you're looking for, Commissioner Engel.
Correct.
Right. How it compounds year after year, where you're at the end of that 10 years or so.
Exactly.
So that would be helpful, Mr. Johnson.
Certainly, we can do that.
All right. Are there other questions so far about? Commissioner Book?
So just in perspective, how are we doing? Would be the question, right? So everybody looks and they say it's a rough or challenging 5 months, but how are we doing as it relates to other benchmarks and other pensions and other pension plans and trust fund investments?
So if you look at a peer group of public pension plans for this fiscal year to date, we're probably at the lower end of performance because of the volatility. But if you look at the longer term, going back 20 or 30 years, we're still in the top 2% of all public pension plans in the peer group. And that's our goal, is to have the long-term returns.
So if people, obviously, when you have retirees and stuff, they have nervousness when they see that, a lot of anxiety and worry about kind of their future. You would say that this is what?
I'd say this is a well-invested plan that's going to be here for another 100 years unless somebody decides to shift it to a defined contribution plan.
Thank you. It's solid.
Not about much.
And this is the nature of This is the nature of large markets and volatility. Good, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. I didn't have anything else besides to say that something, and therefore, the current volatility is a little rough on our general employees pension plan, the current volatility, on the downside of the volatility. But the past, some of those years, FY '23, going from a very bad year to a very good year, we did much better than the benchmark index in that general employees pension plan. So that volatility was actually quite on the ups. When it was going up, we went even further up. So that volatility was good for us there, but the current volatility is a little rough on the general employees pension plan. That's all I really noticed from it. And these are also quarter ending on March 31st, and there's a lot of stuff that's happened since then. So we will continue to see, but obviously, as Mr. Johnson said, plan for the very long term. So thank you. All right. Any other further questions on this? If not, we will need a motion to accept.
We have a public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Madam Clerk. Yeah, let's go and do the public comment.
Dwayne Baines.
All right. Mr. Baines.
Hey, good afternoon, Dwayne Baines. I just had a few questions. My first two questions is for, and I know this it's already passed, but I just wanted to get a copy of the data sheet that y'all was presenting, since it wasn't on the screen or anything, for 436, and for the current one that we looking at now, the 421. If I can get a printout of that, so I can kind of follow along with the numbers that y'all are presenting. And then the next question is that these investments are pretty much like private investment, like stock investments, or and so I'm just asking because I see that, I know they don't hardly invest in the east side of Gainesville, but I see the Evergreen Cemetery, so I guess y'all invest in dead people for our youth to kill each other and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of interested in the answers of these investments, or how Evergreen Cemetery Trust Fund kind of make money, what kind of percentage y'all make off that.
All right, Mr. Baines, thank you. We just to let you know that yes, these are all our funds across the city that are invested in the stock market mostly, right? The stock market, the big stock market. But Evergreen does have its own separate trust fund. I don't know exactly how all of our original capital got in there, whether it was just money we had at the end of an operation, but Evergreen does have their own trust fund to help support their continued operation going forward. So it's not a big nest egg there, but it's a little bit, and it is managed in similar ways as far as in a private stock. But yes, this is not the money we invest into different parts of our city. We do that every year through our budget, through both the general revenue, which we discussed a little bit of, where we're spending upwards of $4 million on some of our capital and some of our buildings. At least we're reinvesting in our buildings. So, but thank you, Mr. Baines, for asking questions. And the clerk with city staff will get you the printouts you want for 436 and 421, and they'll figure out the shortened version you want, maybe just the sheet that most of us are looking at, as opposed to an entire investment plan, which is a little deep. But they'll get that so that you can easily reference and see what we're all looking at, and what Mr. Johnson was referring to, particularly in the pension plan.
Thank you.
So please see city staff. One of our clerks here will help you at the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
All right.
That in public comments.
All right. So we will need a motion for accepting the submitted report and referring to the commission.
I'll make that motion.
All right. Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Signifies aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
425-422 Gainesville Operating Funds Investment Policy Statement Update. Recommendations, the Finance Committee review and approve the updated 2025 City of Gainesville Operating Funds Investment Policy Statement and refer to the update 2025 City of Gainesville Operating Funds Investment Policy Statement to the City Commission for review and approval.
Yes, Mr. Chair. William Johnston is here again. He's the investment officer for the city. He will provide the report to the committee.
Mr. Chair and committee members, this agenda item is just an update to the city's operating funds investment policy statement. These are the funds that I reviewed previously in the former agenda item that I mentioned were basically the cash of the city that's invested in fixed income securities and similar types of assets. A lot of the recommended changes are just sort of housekeeping items. I can walk through a summary of those, and then if you have specific questions about anything, I can review that with you. There were some general formatting changes, really just renumbering of items and sections to try to comply with a city policy template that came out a year or two ago. There are adjustments to the allowable investments and parameters. We increased the maximum portfolio percentages and maturities of a few different types of securities, including corporate bonds, municipal bonds, and a few other items there. We removed bankers' acceptances from allowable investments just because they're not really used any longer, sort of an antiquated type of investment, so we didn't feel it was needed. The total portfolio maturity constraints were adjusted, which will allow us to put a moderately higher portion of the portfolio in longer-term maturities than what was previously allowed.
Mr. Johnson, can you tell us a little bit about why that is?
What
What was a previous condition in the past that might have meant that we wanted to only do, like, let's say the 15-year versus going into the future of 20 years?
Yeah, I would say that the policy was relatively, maybe overly conservative for a long time. But what we're seeing now with the changes in the yield curve, I think it makes sense to be able to go out to 20 years because that's kind of a point where you can get, with part of the portfolio, we have limits on how much of the portfolio can be invested in at that maturity. But there's a portion of the portfolio that could be earning as much as 1% higher, and if you're talking about on a 50 million or 100 or 150 million, that's $500,000 or $1 million or $1.5 million more a year that you can earn if you go out further.
So is this that the yield curve, the traditional yield curve is a little different than what we're experiencing now, and not just now, but potentially into the future. So
it's a steeper yield curve that we're seeing on the long end, and so we're just trying to take advantage of that.
Okay. Thank you. Continue.
We removed some of the restricted language that had been put into the policy in previous years, and that's in response to the Florida legislation that prohibits those types of restrictions. And we also made reference to the Florida statutes that address those restrictions and require the consideration only of pecuniary factors when making investment decisions. Some investment benchmarks were updated due just to name changes within the benchmark industry. You have mergers or name changes of the index from time to time. The indexes themselves didn't change, just the names, so we updated those. And then there was a section that previously stated we would report quarterly, but in 2023 the Commission advised staff that they wanted to see this type of summary reporting that I just provided semi-annually, so we just updated the policy to reflect that.
All right. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Engel?
No, just having looked over everything, I'm comfortable with the changes we've made. So most of it looks just clean up and some minor changes on investment policy that I'm good with. So do we need a motion on this one? Yes, I'd be happy to make a motion to refer this fund investment policy statement to the city commission.
Second, and I'll have a question before we vote.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Commissioner Book?
Yes, we've added the language in the policy. Essentially, we've lifted the state statute language. We put it in the policy to comply and cleaned up. We've dropped some other sections here that we know cannot be in the policy. And my question was just a logistical one. The city attorney has reviewed this and is comfortable with what you see here as it related to the way we've changed the policy?
Mr. Attorney?
Chair, yes.
Yes, that's my question.
Good question.
Yes, thank you.
And I'll just say thank you to staff for this work of cleaning up multiple years. Things changed in the state legislature, previous policies passed by the commission. Some of it is just clean up things we no longer enforce or we no longer practice, but it's now time to put it in the policy to make clear, particularly as if the state of Florida wants to go poking and asking, to make sure that our printed documents already align with how we've changed our practices, that we've already changed to line up with state law. So I really appreciate that. Madam Clerk, do we have any comments from the public?
We have no public comments.
All right. In that case, let's go ahead and vote on this. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
2025-423, Gainesville General Employees Pension Plan Investment Policy Statement Update Recommendation. The Finance Committee review and approve the updated 2025 Gainesville General Employees Pension Plan Investment Policy Statement and refer the updated 2025 City of Gainesville Operating Funds Investment Policy Statement to the Board of Trustees for the Gainesville General Employee Pensions Plan for review and approval.
All right, Madam Manager?
I'm not sure where that one is.
I'm sorry, that should have read, update the City of Gainesville General Employees Pension Plan Investment Policy Statement, not Operating Fund Investment Policy Statement.
Hold on. So which one did we flip? We just did,
You just did the Operating Fund Investment
we
Policy
did
Statement.
operating,
That's number 4.
which is 2022, which I thought we just did. And now we're on to 423, which is the pension plan investment policy.
General government.
Does the draft recommendation the text need to be updated?
The text of the recommendation needs to be updated.
Okay.
Oh, I see, yeah.
It's referencing the Operating Fund Investment Policy. It should reference the General Employees
Yeah.
Pension Plan.
We can work with the city manager's office to update that language and have it corrected in the minutes. And certainly the motion would reflect the proper language.
So the item that we are moving to now, is it item number 6?
No, it's item number 5.
The recommendation on 4 and 5.
I see.
Should say the investment.
Am I looking at something different?
Yeah, so just the recommendation on number 5 references the operating funds instead of the pension funds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That right there, got it, okay. Sorry, in there, we see the word pension plan multiple times, right? All right, so now I see. So we will just change the recommendation upon the motion, okay.
Yeah, I'm looking over your shoulder there, Mr. Chair.
So we won't. That will just be general employee pension investment.
Replacing that.
Right, that's what, okay. Perfect, that changes, okay. Sorry, Mr.
Sorry
Johnson.
about that. So similar to the investment policy statement that you just looked at, this is for the General Employees Pension Plan. And If the committee does choose to refer it to the commission, it will be to the commission sitting as the Board of Trustees for the pension plan, because it's the Board of Trustees that would need to give final approval for this. Basically, the only changes to this investment policy that we're recommending is to the asset allocation in attachment C, which is the last page. And then also there were some minor modifications to the benchmark index to reflect the changes recommended in the asset allocation. And the benchmark index is on page 2 of the document. Primarily what we're doing is increasing the targets for U.S. equity. We are moderately reducing the targets for international equity, and we are moderately reducing the targets for fixed income and real estate investments, and then also making similar changes to the ranges that are allowed for those investments. The way the asset allocation works is we have a target, but then we also have a range around that target to allow the investments to go up or down without having to rebalance immediately. And thereby we let the investment managers, the third-party investment managers, manage that money accordingly. We typically make rebalancing transactions at the end of a quarter. I also brought had Brendan Vavrica from Mariner Investments attend today in case the board or in case the committee has any questions. Brendan works for Mariner Investments, which is the investment consulting firm, third-party firm that's hired by the pension plans. They do third-party reporting. They also do due diligence on all the investment managers and make recommendations about the investment policy statement. Both Mariner and the Pension Review Committee, which is a citizen advisory committee for the general pension plan, have reviewed and recommended these changes.
I did have my question was just the change to, in essence, domestic versus international equities. My understanding was that in times of domestic volatility, that the having those international is a bit of a, I don't want to say hedge, but makes it a little less risky. But this is refocusing, at least making the benchmark weighted heavier towards domestic stocks, equities, as opposed to international.
So the total domestic equity target is being recommended to be changed from 47% to 60%, while the total international equity allocation is recommended to be reduced from 28% to 25%. So that's 3% differential there. The rest of the differential comes from a reduction in fixed income from 8% to 5%, and in real estate from 12% to 10%.
Okay.
And the backup that's been provided is primarily to explain the reasoning for this, and I can walk through the backup if you like.
I think I'm fine.
I wouldn't need that. Good.
Okay.
Good.
Commissioner Book?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just in this regard, there's various levels of review. Here we have staff who reviews this, essentially rebalancing. It's gone to Mariner to review and kind of compares it against their other clients. In a particular case, the Pension Review Committee reviewed this in late March. Now it comes to us and theoretically goes from us to the entire commission. I'm just trying to simplify it. If you were to talk about what this means, we're essentially rebalancing to reduce risk over the long run.
This isn't to reduce risk. We're probably going to slightly increase the volatility of the pension plan by doing this. But I can't help but reference one of our backup attachments, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
There's a thing called the efficient frontier of investment and modern portfolio theory. And what this does is looks at the composition of different types of portfolios with a primary split between two asset classes, stocks and bonds. There are, of course, other asset classes such as real estate, alternative investments, and things of that nature, commodities, things like that. But for purposes of discussing this, just looking at stocks and bonds would illustrate the point. This curve shows you on a return on the vertical graph. You see it going from 8% to 13%. And then on the horizontal part of the graph, you see the risk and volatility. And that goes from 9% to 18%. And basically, each one of those circles shows you a portfolio mix of stocks and bonds and the relative return and volatility associated with that. We're basically going to move up the curve a little bit from, say, an 80 to 20% bond. We're not going to 100% stocks, but 80% stocks, we're moving up to 85%. So we're moving up that chart just a little bit, and that's to get better long-term returns. And that's the focus that we have. We still think that it's a very moderate increase in volatility, but again, we focus on these being perpetual plans, and we really aren't concerned with short-term volatility. No one likes it, but if you're going to get better longer-term returns, we feel like it's worth it.
Okay, so so increasing risk slightly, but still rebalancing, and it's maybe you would say it's for growth and stability.
Right.
In the fund. Mariner agrees with this particular concept, and it would like to hear maybe from Mr. Fabrica related to how that compares to other clients that would be similarly positioned.
Certainly. Good afternoon. Again, Brendan Maverick for the record. So compared across the spectrum of clients, this allocation is definitely more on the aggressive side. But it is also the type of portfolio that is going to maximize returns or keep you at the upper end of that range. So when you look, we have a lot of plans that might only have 60% equity and 30% fixed income because they're hyper concerned about volatility, but they're also earning 1.5% to 2% less than you guys on an annualized basis over 20 or 30 years. And so, yes, that allocation is more volatile, but you're being rewarded for that over time. And William mentioned earlier, yes, dating back to 1994, you placed number 2 within the public fund universe. You can arguably do a little bit better, but it's hard to do much better. You're right there at the top, and that type of rate of return is well above your assumed rate, which ultimately is the kind of the primary goal. In order to meet all those obligations, the plan has to earn that rate of return that is being expected or projected out into the future. And that rate is well in excess of what you're expecting or planning for that plan to earn. I apologize, was there a second question?
Yeah, it's going.
Was there a second question in there that I could address? I apologize if I missed that.
Thank you.
You good? Okay. So it's a very well-funded and stable pension. Other pensions that may not be in the same position as this, they might have a little more to fear by being a little more volatile because the money might not be there exactly when they need it at some point in the, I'll say, the nearer future. But we are looking for truly long-term because we are very stable now.
Correct.
We could handle down the road a little volatility because we're already going to be able to make our obligations far into the future. So that's why I think what I'm gathering is this might not be right for other municipal pensions, but it is right for us because we have done so well over the years.
Absolutely. And I should have said one other thing earlier too. We didn't quite talk about that there was an allocation in here within the old investment policy that was earmarked toward alternatives that really hadn't been funded recently but was designated there. And as a general rule, that is an illiquid investment, something you don't really have access to. So part of this change is kind of removing that earmarked illiquid portion and putting it into the liquid part of the market. So volatility is one part of risk for a portfolio, the volatility or the change in price. But another type of risk that exists is access to your capital. And so what's not addressed in standard deviation or that typical measure of risk is liquidity. And what this change does is it does enhance the liquidity of the portfolio by removing some of that illiquid portion and putting it into the liquid domestic portion. So again, not difficult to quantify, it's not there, but that is a component of that adjustment.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Labrca.
Thank you.
Any other questions for him? Commissioner Engel?
No, I mean, I get nervous with the amount of, compared to other peer cities, like how much we've got in equities versus anything else is concerning, but seems to have worked out so far. So, I'm good with it for now, anyhow.
All right. All right, then we will need a motion to approve and refer to the Board of Trustees.
Can we, what's the link, can you read the language change for us for 2025-423?
So I believe it would be, sorry. The Finance Committee review and approve the updated 2025 Gainesville General Employees Pension Plan Investment Policy Statement and refer to the updated City of Gainesville Employees Pension Plan Investment Policy Statement to the Board of Trustees for the Gainesville General Employees Pension Plan for review and approval. Do I have that correct?
I think so.
Okay, I move approval of 2025-423 with those language change.
Second. All right. Are we all clear on the language change, city staff, clerk? All right. Do we have any comments from the public on this item?
Mr. Chair, there's no public comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
All right, 2025-425, update on GRU city finance transactions as of Q2 fiscal year 2025. Recommendations: the Finance Committee received a report from Financial Services regarding the fiscal year 2025 balances with general government and GRU as of March 31st, 2025.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Dennis Nguyen, Finance Director, is here. This is an item that you requested us have on the agenda as a standing item, which is pretty much where we are with the Gainesville Regional Utilities transfers in and transfers out of the general fund. So, Mr. Nguyen.
Good afternoon, Chair Willits and members of the Finance Committee. Dennis Nguyen, Director of Financial Services. And I'm here to provide an update to our interfund balances with GRU as of March 31st, 2025. So to begin with our transfers and charges for services from GRU, starting with the general services contribution, we've received $3.5 million out of the budgeted $8.5 million. This was reduced by the GRU authority for county streetlights of $556,000 and legal fees of $142,000. So we are projecting at this point to receive the general services contribution of $7.2 million for the fiscal year 2025. Next, we have indirect costs. This was also reduced unilaterally by the GRU authority. It was originally supposed to be $3.3 million, but they have decided to pay $2.2 million, so that's reflected in our 2025 budget development. So we have received $1 million out of the $2.2 million, and we're fully expecting to receive the $2.2 million as projected. Next, we have utility taxes. We've received $7.8 million out of the budgeted $16.1 million. This is just regular recurring payments that GRU transfers to us every month. And then next, we have the pension obligation bonds. We've received $4.5 million out of the budget $9 million. This is exactly half of the required obligation from GRU. So we have no disagreements or or delays in the pension obligation payments. Next, we have fleet management and fuel services. These costs are billed monthly to GRU, and so far, for the first 6 months, we've billed $1.3 million out of the projected $2.2 million for fleet management and fuel services.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I think you skipped a line.
Fleet management,
Was that 1.9 out of 3.9?
1.9 out of 3.9 projected, yes.
Got it, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did read the wrong number. So next would be general insurance premiums and operations. GRU provides roughly 44% of the operations and premiums. So far, we've received 1.3 million out of our projected 2.2 million, so we're on track there. Next, we also have the city attorney's direct services. This is separate from the indirect cost. This is providing for 1.5 staff out of Mr. Nee's office, so far they've paid $86,000 out of the projected $206,000. And this is for cost of those two positions.
And if I can, Mr. Attorney, that's still going as has been, your staff that are dedicated to serving GRU?
That is correct. I think we are probably coming near a decision point. I know my understanding is as of last week, they've hired an attorney over there. I've been trying to communicate with Mr. Pilarski to set up a meeting to figure out what expectations are going forward. But yes, it's still going on.
Thank you. Sorry, Dennis.
And finally, we have miscellaneous services. This is refuse, GPD services, and unemployment taxes for a total of $64,000 for the first 6 months of the year. So that sums it up for transfers and charges for service from GRU. But next, I'll go into transfers and charges for services to GRU. So the big one here is going to be the IT service level agreement. We still don't have a signed service level agreement, but we have paid $2.7 million. This would project us to pay $5.4 million for IT services for this fiscal year, which we should be coming in under budget if that is the case. But again, we don't have a signed SLA, but we still paid them for the services.
So just to be clear, we assigned SLA, but the 5.9 we budgeted because of some communication from GRU.
That's correct. Next, we have telephone services. These are just the cost of our landlines across the city, $86,000 so far we've paid. And then next, we have stormwater management and solid waste billing services. So far, we've paid them $400,000 out of the MOU that we have an agreement with GRU. This should be in effect till the end of next fiscal year. And then finally, we have miscellaneous charges for service. This is the majority of this balance of $471,000 is primarily property insurance that they pay for and we reimburse them. And then also the Catalyst building that was transferred to general government recently. So in total, as of March 31st, the due to GRU balance totaled $3.3 million. Again, this is primarily reflecting IT service payments for the first 2 quarters of the year. But I'm pleased to announce we're current with all balances with GRU at this point. I have provided an attachment with a detail of every transaction between general government and GG. This is the same attachment I went over last quarter for Finance Committee. But if you have any questions on any of the details and balances between general government and GRU, I am available for questions.
Any questions? I know that I really want to express my appreciation to you and your staff because I think we're in a crazy kind of weird time, and because some decisions are made unilaterally across the street. If it's not communicated to both this committee and the whole commission as a whole, we may forget where we're at in this relationship. I know that the manager and all the charter officers have worked diligently to uphold our end of the bargain and to have as productive and fruitful as a relationship as possible with GRU Authority and their CEO. But sometimes if something happens and we're not getting the funds we're supposed to, or even if we're behind on something, I think it's some good transparency between the two different sides of our city. So I really appreciate that. It sounds like we are roughly, at least for what I understood, headed into, let's say, budget making season, and looking at where we're going to be at the end of the year. I feel comfortable that we're about what has been communicated by Madam Manager and staff consistently through all our meetings. But I really appreciate this. I know probably at the next commission meeting, at every single commission meeting, Commissioner Eastman is going to talk about this. So now we have we have it in a document. Should there be any questions? Any other questions from the committee or Madam Manager? Anything new we need to know besides what's on paper?
No, sir. I did speak with Mr. Bolarski, I guess, about maybe a month and a half or so ago about executing the ITSLA. And the response was that they wanted the attorney that they were in the process of bringing on to take a look at it. And that was the last communication that I've had with him regarding that. But we're continuing to get the service, and so we're continuing to pay for the service.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, Ms. Wren, do you have anything else for us on this?
That is all.
All right. Well, like I said, I know this is something kind of new, extra. I really appreciate it. I hope the rest of the commission does as well. Just so there's no surprises for us coming down the line, particularly as we are in both understanding where this FY25 budget ends and understanding the longer relationship as we plan budget FY26. So thank you, Mr. Wynn.
Thank you.
This is informational only.
Mr. Chair, we do have a public
Do we have
comment.
public comment?
Mr. Dwayne Baines.
Mr. Baines.
Yeah, again, I just have a couple of questions. I just was kind of wondering, I guess it was kind of new to me. I didn't realize GRU is GRU using the same attorney as the city attorney? Is that what's...
GRU utilizes some services that they contract out of our city attorney office for portions of the work they do. The city attorney could clarify exactly. Some of those may be as simple as a right-of-way issue with an individual landowner. But they're also looking at having their own in-house attorney. They have hired, if this is correct, they've hired outside attorneys to represent them in lawsuits. Or were those actually internal who represented them
I
in
think
lawsuits?
those are just lawsuits against the general government.
Okay.
Our office has continued to provide representation in reviewing their contracts, providing some counsel as to operational and regulatory matters, and in all of their tort defense and active litigation.
So that's where they currently use us, but as the city manager or the city attorney mentioned, they are headed, it sounds, on their own direction at some point, that they will no longer as much utilize as many of our attorneys on our side.
And I was just wondering, how long has that relationship been? Like 5 years, 10 years?
So GRU Authority, it's only been since October 1st, 2023, that GRU Authority is a quasi-separate organization from the city. So we have had different levels for the past going on 2 years of them utilizing some of our services, just as we utilize some of their services like IT. We pay them, they run our IT, but we pay them. They use some of our staff, but they pay us very directly, very clearly for that, particularly for our city attorneys, their staff.
Okay, yeah, and thank you for the transparency. And I guess, Mr. Wynn, I was just wondering, out of just curiosity, it's good that you put the chart up. Is there a breakdown of like what area paying more taxes than the other, or what area receiving new lights? I know we was talking about the lights and stuff like that. What area? Because I know on certain areas they still got the wooden light poles that's been up for at least 50 years or more. So I was just kind of wonder if y'all may have a chart of something like that, or where, and when the last time that,
Mr. Baines, please address me.
Oh, okay. Well,
I know
you asked about.
We're a little informal, but a little formal.
Okay, well,
Ask
yeah.
me questions. We'll see if we can.
Okay, so yeah, that was my question. Is there any data, any kind of worksheet that shows far as like with the lights and far as like what areas being taxed more than the other, or what areas getting more charges than another. Just based on that, I kind of remember seeing something like that, like maybe 10, 15 years ago. It was a breakdown showing side of town getting taxed more, and I think GRU was doing some type of initiative. This is one they showed that East Gainesville was built more, and they were saying because older houses, older electricity or something like that. So I just wanted to see where we at current in 2025, where we at today. Is that still similar where far as like being taxed and far as new lighting for the east side of Gainesville compared to other parts of Gainesville?
Right. Is that all your comments?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for Ms. Baines. GRU Authority issues of what they actually do as far as their street lights and whatnot, and any of their rates, we cannot answer basically any of that. The GRU Authority that is appointed by the governor, those 5 members are who you should take your questions to. Their CEO is Ed Belarski. We can get you contact information for that GRU Authority and a schedule of their meetings, which I believe are also on our city's main calendar for their meetings for those kind of questions. They're very interesting. But it's just a piece of information. I'm interested in similar things. City staff recently brought to us a report on where we collect tree mitigation fund dollars when people cut trees, and then where in town we spend that. It's great. It's on the website. It's a map, and you can literally kind of see like, oh, the city bought land here or planted trees there. I appreciate your interest in that kind of equitable distribution of taxes. But as far as GRU goes, that is all on them. But they did get a big grant to improve wastewater or water structures and some other services, specifically in underserved markets. They have some great information about that at GRU. So Thank you for your questions. Normally comments are one way, but this is fun and interesting. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Baines. And be sure at the end of this meeting to talk to our clerks. I know you wanted some of our printout. Oh, perfect. Great. All righty then. All right. So this item did not need, we were just receiving this report, though I will say probably the rest of the commission, or at least Commissioner Eastman, will be interested in it to see it if he hasn't looked at it yet. So, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, we have member comments.
Members, do we have any comments?
I'm good. Same.
Good. I just want to say thank you to city staff for providing all that. There's a bunch of it. Some of it is routine. Some of it is some big finally making some decisions on some capital. So that third budget amendment was, I think, important to see, important for us to understand, and the rest of the commission. I'm glad we're getting to that list. And I just want to recognize that those funds there are often because in year after year after year, city staff has either made economies so that there is money left over at the end of the year, or they couldn't quite get the help they needed, and the savings were, we end up saving because people end up working a little harder, a little smarter, a little longer before that other person gets hired here or there. So I just want to acknowledge that city staff, I understand that when there's money left over at the end of the year, it's probably not because we didn't deliver all of our services. It's because fewer people delivered them. And that's why there might be something left over at the end, almost as accident, but happy accident now that we're going to dump some of that money back into some of our facilities and make sure that they can stand the test of time and continue to provide the services that our residents and citizens have grown to expect. So thank you, Madam Manager, to your staff and to the other charters. With that, our next meeting is September 2nd, 2025, unless we have a budget amendment before then that is pressing. So with that, we are adjourned.